All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Stanke, joining you today from beautiful New Jersey. Yes, I said it. Beautiful New Jersey. I feel like I'm perfectly positioned today because we first heard from Nora about the value of learning and the role of humans in collectively learning. And then we heard from Chris about the scientific method. And I'm here to talk to you about our DORA project, which is about using the scientific method to learn about humans, how we act, how we interact, and how we learn together. I'm a developer advocate with DORA and Google Cloud Platform. So I want to make an assertion. And here's what I want to assert today. I want to assert this. We can measure software delivery performance. And informed by such measurements, through a process of continuous learning, we can improve software delivery performance. You might be saying, can we though? Because we've been trying to do this for a long time, right? We've tried measuring it through things like lines of code. And I bet everyone in this room got real clever when that happened and wrote a little script, a couple lines of bash. You write 2 lines of bash, and all of a sudden you got thousands of lines of code, or defect counts. It just takes a couple more lines of bash to write something that builds bugs and automatically fixes them. So this has been a fraught area in our industry. We've struggled to measure software delivery. But I'm here to assert that we can, and tell you a little bit about how we do, and invite you to join our ongoing conversation about that effort. So first we're going to tell you about DORA, which is the DevOps Research and Assessment program. We're going to look at some of the durable findings we've found through our research. I want to show you about some of the areas of research that we've been exploring more recently and some of the things that are emerging that we're learning. Some surprises, we'll have time for a little Q&A, and then I got one last note I want to offer before we have snack time. Show of hands, who's heard of DORA? Show of hands, who hasn't heard of DORA? All right, awesome. I like you better. I like the other folks. Of course we love our fans, but you didn't say you were fans, you just said you'd heard of us. But we also love sharing this with folks who haven't heard about this yet. So first off, what is this DORA thing? Well, we are a group of researchers who explore software delivery. DORA has been around since 2014. It was founded by Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble, and in 2018 became part of Google Cloud. And we've been continuing our research since then, led by a team of researchers and the auxiliary folks like myself, the advocates, who our job is to bring the research out and share it with the community. So let's take a look at the science. There was supposed to be like lightning bolts and dry ice. Is that? No? Okay, no, never mind. We're not doing that. Let's take a look at the science that we do. The first thing is we need to find people, all sorts of people from all over the world. We use a broad survey-based data collection methodology. And that means we talk to people from all industries, all company sizes, all levels of tenure within the industry. We talk to engineers, we talk to software developers, we talk to sysadmins, we talk to product managers, we talk to SREs, we talk to QA folks, we talk to executives in the C-suite, all over. And from them, we get data. We gather a lot of data. We ask these folks a whole bunch of questions. Survey usually takes about 20 minutes. And it's a great opportunity to really self-reflect. We hear from people that gave me a chance to understand what I'm up to. Some interesting questions. I hadn't thought about that. So if you're interested in participating, we have a community group, dora.community. And we'll post updates there about when the next research comes out. Especially for those folks who raise your hands who are already fans. Everyone else will be fans after this talk. The folks who are already fans, visit dora.community. It's a great place to connect with folks all over the world. So we ask all sorts of questions. And the questions are about how do you work? What do you do? How do you feel about what do you do? What kind of results do you get? What kind of technical results? What kind of organizational results? What kind of quality of life results? So what do you do and how's it going? This is just a small sample of the kinds of questions that we ask people. Most of these we ask based on a Likert scale. A Likert scale is simply a scale from 1 to 7 that some dude named Likert put his name on, but it's used a lot in behavioral research, and a lot of methodology is based around using that kind of a scale. Then We crunch that up using analytical methods. There's a lot of R code and Jupyter notebooks, things that I find mysterious because we have folks who do that. I'm more of the talking side, they're the science side. But we do have a great working relationship, which is something that I enjoy working a lot with. The research is very much grounded in the predictive analysis methodology here. So predictive analysis means that we can look at inputs and outputs, and based on the methodology, we can draw inferences about the direction of influence. And by that I mean it's not strictly a causation. We can't say for sure that if you do thing A, you're going to get outcome B that you're looking for. But it's more than correlation. We have evidence that says that the actions that we take on one side of this arrow are predicting the outcomes on the other side of the arrow. So we feed all that data from all those questions into that model, and we get what we call our structural equation model, SEM. We sometimes call this the BFD. That's big, friendly diagram. And this sums up a whole bunch of activities of what kinds of things people can do and what kind of outcomes they're going to get from it. I struggle to call it best practices because everything is different, everything's contextually specific. But it's a good snapshot of the kinds of things that, in aggregate, our industry has found to be useful and the kind of outcomes we can get from that. We publish a yearly report. This is our most recent, came out in September. You can grab it at that link. It's about 78 pages. I say about, I know exactly how many pages it is because I've been working on getting some printed copies. But it's available for free as a PDF. And they also have reports going back several years that you can also check a look. There's some great deep dives if you've read this year's report. But if not, definitely take a look at this year's report. Share it throughout your organization. So let's look at durable findings. As I mentioned, we've been doing this for a number of years. So these are some of the findings that have happened year over year, things that we have reason to believe are pretty likely to be actually effects that are out there in the real world. And these are things that have proven useful to practitioners in their own work. So the first and most famous, if you've heard of DORA, you've probably heard of these metrics, the 4 key metrics. We have found that this is a reliable way to measure software engineering. And it goes with measuring 4 metrics. The first 2 metrics are about throughput. How fast and how much velocity are we achieving when we're getting code out to users? So there's 2 metrics there, deployment frequency and lead time for changes. Deployment frequency, how often do we make changes to our production systems that users can actually interact with or experience? We just sort of talk about feature flagging, and there's some interesting nuance there. We'd love to talk about that in open spaces. But in aggregate, it's how often do we get code out to users? And then the second bit is how long does it take to get there? How long from when we commit that code and say, I think this is good code for a user, to when the users can actually get it? Is that measured in minutes, hours, months, maybe even years? We generally find that faster and more frequent releases are better. Not coincidentally, those correlate with batch size. So small batch sizes are better. Better in terms of our ability to deliver value to the business. But going fast is not the only thing we want. We want to go fast and also deliver a quality service. So our 2 throughput metrics are balanced against 2 stability metrics. And that's our change failure rate and our time to restore service. Change failure rate is the oh, oopsies incident, oopsies measure. It's when you deploy code and you say, oh, oopsies, or perhaps you say something a little saltier, but you know you got to fix it. And then the time to restore service is, of course, how long does it take to restore service? A lot of nuance in that one, too. We heard some of that in Nora's talk. And again, would love to work with y'all on refining those definitions. And what definitions do you use in your practice? But in aggregate, these 4 metrics are predictive of the value that an organization, a software organization, delivers to their overall organization. Now, another thing that we've durably found is this. Software delivery matters. We know this. We know this. We've been doing this. We know that we have good reason to have jobs. But we have found that software delivery performance, as measured by those 4 keys, predicts organizational performance, whatever the organizational metric is that you have, whether that's selling widgets or planting trees. And it also helps things like reducing burnout and increasing tenure of employees. So it's good for the business or the organization, it's good for the people. Now, those metrics are a way of seeing how you're doing, but they don't tell you how to do better. Through our research, we explore capabilities, and capabilities are the how you do better. And so we study a catalog of capabilities. These are technical, cultural, and process that are ways of working. And you can find our whole catalog at dora.dev/capabilities. So the model, that predictive model I showed you, is about how these capabilities drive outcomes. And every one of these has value and may or may not be something that you should be focusing on in your teams right now. The most important capability in my mind, though numbers don't necessarily talk about what's important, this is an extremely valuable driver of not only those organizational outcomes, but those team health outcomes. And it's the value of generative culture. So this is a model that we build on from sociology research by a researcher named Ron Westrom, who studied teams in high information, high stakes contexts and how they interact. This was things like nuclear power plants and airport traffic controllers, right? And looked at how do they talk to each other, how do they work together, and created typology. What Westrom's team found is that organizations that have a high cooperation, high trust, psychologically safe context are going to, on average, are going to outperform their competitors with the more bureaucratic or pathological. So creating that culture of trust, creating that shared learning environment actually is better for the outcome, better for the bottom line, and kind of obviously is better for our frame of minds as well. We have observed these dynamics in any technical context, any industry, any age of organization. So lest you think that this doesn't apply to you, it probably does, and we would love to learn from you and work with you on making it happen in your industry, in your context. This works in regulated environments. This works in government. The nuance is always different, but everyone can apply these findings. Only you are you, so you need to find yourself in this framework and use it as a tool to develop. So wrapping it all up, we get a model that looks like this. We like to read this from the right to left. We start with our organizational outcomes. This is what matters to the business. This is what keeps us getting our paycheck. So we know that we can drive that, move that needle through our software delivery and operations performance, the work that we do as technologists. And the way to get better at that is to work through our capabilities and enhance our individual ability to do technical, cultural, and process. So here are some emerging insights. These are some of the things that we've started studying more recently over the last couple of years. We've looked a lot at security recently. Now, we actually have an established finding. Shifting left on security predicts software delivery performance. So if you model the SDLC from code to delivery to ongoing operation, shifting left means incorporating security earlier in the process, in things like code review, in things like automated testing. Our new research avenues, we've started looking at some of the specific ways that teams implement some of that shifting left security. So we've been looking at the software supply chain, which is a hot topic these days with good reason. And we've used industry frameworks like SLCA, SLSA, software level supply chain security, and the SSDF, which is Secure Software Development Framework, comes out of NIST. These are both kind of catalogs of ways of achieving security. And we've been looking at these and finding that those are predictive of other aspects of success. And look at that, that's just an empty diagram. I was doing this on the airplane. What this picture shows is that there is a key integration point, and it is continuous integration. So we found that organizations that follow the principles of good security actually overall come out with below average outcomes. Organizations that have good, solid CI have below average outcomes in terms of their software delivery outcomes. Organizations that have both are overperforming and have better than average outcomes in terms of security and organizational performance. So the CI system, what we're seeing is that is the way that we bring security into a DevOps practice. We've also been looking a lot at reliability. We've actually been studying this since 2018. If anyone is a longtime reader of the report, you'll know that it used to be called availability. We now renamed it starting in 2021 to reliability because that's a more encompassing term. And we've asked a lot of questions about reliability engineering practices and included these in our modeling. And what we found is that reliability, I like to call it a force multiplier. So we've got our software delivery performance. That's measured by those 4 key metrics. And we found that reliability moves orthogonally to software performance. Teams that succeed in one don't necessarily succeed in both. And I think that reflects the fact that operations and software delivery, software development are still somewhat different things. We have specialists in both, and that remains even as we develop our shared context through a DevOps practice. But when teams succeed in both of those areas, you get a compound value. And that really amplifies the value that we as technologists can deliver to stakeholders. In 2021, we found that teams with high software delivery performance scores who also use extensive reliability engineering practices are 1.8 times more likely to report that their business will achieve their commercial goals. Now, let's look at surprises. Some things that came up in 2022, our most recent report, that we didn't expect. Remember, this is science. Still no? Still no? The theremins, the bubbling test tubes and stuff, or not? Wasn't in the budget? Okay. This is science. And science at its core is about the embrace of uncertainty, right? Things are going to get weird. We don't know what we're going to find every year. And when we do find it, we don't necessarily know what it means. We offer some interpretations. But to quote Derek DeBellis, he's one of our research team, he says, "We statistically explore over 100 pathways for each State of DevOps report, and in doing so, we invite the risk of spurious findings simply by chance. We try to counteract that with yearly replication efforts." So I want to show you some of the things that we found in 2022 that surprised us a bit, but that we're working to continually investigate and replicate, or to find maybe that they aren't durable and they don't replicate. This is the new edge of the spear for us. So the first thing we found is that the clusters are moving around. Typically, we've done a cluster analysis. We look at organizations across the spread of their 4 key metrics. And a cluster analysis shows that groups tend to glom together. We get clusters. For 3 years, there were 4 clusters, which we gave names to: low, medium, high, elite. And then in 2022, it was 3 clusters. What happened to that 4th cluster? Where'd it go? Turns out, if you go back to the history prior to 2017, there were only 3 clusters. The cluster analysis methodology doesn't ask how many clusters you want. It just says, here are the groups I found. Of course, I'm anthropomorphizing it. It doesn't say anything. It's a formula. And so what we see is that the context is continually evolving. There's obviously been a lot of very particular context change in the last few years. And accordingly, the data shows different things. A surprise that we found is security drives software delivery performance. And by that, what we mean is that we've seen for years that security is part of an overall good practice that is beneficial to your outcomes. What we found in 2022, when we looked at the causal pathways or predictive pathways, is that we found that security is actually the mechanism through which the technical capabilities delivered value to the organization. By which we mean that if you look at a pathway directly from technical capabilities, things like version control, CI, trunk-based development, what we found is that those things don't directly influence the outcomes. They only influence the outcomes via the mechanism of the security improvements that are found. And when those security improvements aren't present, then those technical capabilities don't actually help. So it turns out security is not so much of a Band-Aid we slap on at the end because we're worried about bad things happen. It's actually the engine of positive things happening. We found that to be a little surprising, and we're continuing to investigate. Next surprise. Trunk-based development has an unclear effect. So trunk-based development, by that we mean a technical capability, which is having short-lived branches. engineers don't maintain don't hoard your code effectively. Don't leave it on your laptop for several days. We say trunk-based development is when you're merging back to a main branch every day or less, is very much friendly to the notion of a feature flag or a dark launch, because what we want to do is bring our code back to main, run it through our CI systems, and not let it bit rot before it even had a chance to go live. We have found consistently up through 2021 that this was a predictor of software delivery outcomes, and we've been out there recommending it to everyone. In 2022, we had a surprise. The causal arrow flipped. And what we found instead in 2022 is that trunk-based development predicts lower software delivery performance. This is science. No, I'm not going to try. This is science, and as a result, we get new findings. So we're surprised by that. We don't recommend that you go out and stop doing trunk-based development, but we do recommend that you tell us how it's going for you. We want to learn together. Is this a good practice? Maybe the world has changed and it's not a good practice anymore. Or maybe this was a spurious finding. We're not sure. The last surprise I want to share is this. Reliability is more than predictive of success. It's actually essential to success. So we talked about how those software delivery performance, how fast and how stable are we able to produce code, is good for the organizational performance. What we found in 2022 is that that predictive mechanism only takes place if a team has in-depth reliability engineering practices, is achieving a high level of reliability. And by reliability, what we mean is the ability for a service or an application to meet its users' expectations. So it's more than uptime. It's, am I as a user getting what I expect? Is it fast enough? Is it got the correct information? Does it fulfill my expectations? And when we meet that, we say that's a reliable service. So what we found this last year is that not just shipping code fast and stable, but shipping code in a reliable way that is maintained throughout the lifespan of that running application is essential to predicting value to the organization. You could put this in kind of intuitive terms and say if you throw a bunch of code at the user really fast, it doesn't really help if the user can't access it, if the system's falling over all the time. We all knew this, but it's kind of nice to have some data that reinforces it. So these are some of the things that we've been looking at and some of the surprises that we found. We are actively working for the 2023 report right now, developing the survey. I would love to have everyone here participate in our State of DevOps survey. Join DORA.community to get an update. And then we're going to put out another report and we're going to tell you what we found. So with that, I would love to take a couple minutes for some Q&A if anyone has any questions. I see a couple hands raised there, I see there, and I see a microphone there.
I always forget about that.
So on one of your slides, you had the cluster ones, but you didn't describe what the clusters are. They just for software performance delivery?
Yeah, great question. So the question is, the clusters that we looked at, are those just for software delivery, or do they reflect more than the software delivery metrics? Those reflect only the 4 key software delivery metrics, and it's the clusters for performance among the industry of how teams are doing. Also this year, if you go check out the report, we actually did an additional cluster analysis where we brought in the reliability engineering metrics. And what we found was that there are some archetypes. There are actually 4 of those. We did find 4. And those archetypes are about that blended team attributes of software delivery and reliability. And there's a few, what we found is there's some teams that are kind of slow and safe, who are able to achieve pretty good reliability, but kind of by sacrificing their software delivery quality. And then there are other teams who are right there hitting it in all cylinders. Those are our favorites, of course, and a couple other archetypes in between.
So you shared surprises from the 2022 survey. Were there surprises in past years, and how were those surprises resolved, 2021 or 2020, 2019?
So the question is, were there surprises in the past? And the answer certainly is yes. I don't have a list of them at my fingertips, I'm afraid. But the other thing I'll mention is that part of the reason that we really are talking about surprises right now, we talked about, is that there were more of them in 2022. Honestly, a number of things that we had found for several years didn't hold in this most recent. So for example, the number of clusters, the influence of trunk-based development. There's the surprises section in the report lists like 6 or 7 of them. And so there had been surprises before. We certainly did speak about them in those years' reports. But this year was a little bit of a, kind of caught us off guard a little bit in a good way and helped us remember that this is science. The data is going to tell us what it wants to tell us. And it's up to us to try and put it into context, and most importantly, to try and replicate or to revise our understanding if that's what the data tells us.
Hi, so I didn't understand your finding on security. Can you explain that? So you're saying that if security is shifted left, then that has a positive impact on the organization. What does it actually mean?
So what we find is that shifting left of security, as well as the integrating security into our automation and our software delivery pipelines through CI, that awesome picture that didn't show up. What that shows is that by doing that, we get some key organizational benefits. That having that really thorough security engineering practice is good for the software delivery metrics, as well as then predicting organizational success. So doing security is good for the business. What we don't do is try to measure security directly. It's hard, honestly. We don't go out and ask our users, how many incidents did you not have last year? And so it's a real challenge, and it's one that we try to incorporate in the models and make them effective. So in effect, what we don't necessarily do is try to prescribe how to have a secure service. But what we have found is by doing the things that we know or believe to be good for security is actually good for the organization. It's even got some benefits to employee health and satisfaction. So I hear it as sort of flipping my own model upside down from, I'm going to do all the cool stuff, and then I'm going to, okay, I guess I should do some security because it's good for me, so I should, also eat my squash. I'm using squash specifically because I personally like a lot of vegetables, but I do not like squash. But now it seems like security is actually, spaghetti with meatballs. It's like the cool, good thing to eat, because when we do it and when we can achieve it and incorporate it really throughout our software delivery pipeline, it ends up making for better software, better business, happier people. Let's see. Could probably take 1 or 2 more, or?
I know we got one more. Come on.
Okay. Then I want to close with one last. We did have a question. It better be a surprising one, because I told everyone it's time for surprises. All right, we're getting a workout here.
Thank you.
So could you talk us a little bit more about what are the practices that people adopt besides these ones that correlate highly with efficient organizations? And do you have levels or some categorization of how efficient organizations grow with good practices? Is there like most organizations that are successful and highly efficient also do SBOM, or some organizations that are highly efficient, they also have quick tests? Like, is there any, maybe not causation, but correlation of what's positive there?
Yeah, so the question is, what kinds of practices are correlated or predictive of organizational success and efficiency? So one thing that I am obligated to mention is that our model, our DORA framework, is not a maturity model. So there is no one-size-fits-all. We don't try to say that your organization should move in lockstep from step A to step B. Everything is extremely context-specific. That said, that capability catalog that I described, dora.dev/capabilities, everyone here is putting it on their phone right now. DORA.dev/capabilities has the catalog. So there are something like 32 of them, and they range from technical to process to cultural. So on the technical side, it's a lot of things that that you mentioned, SBOMs and security practices, the shifting left, incorporating security into code reviews, et cetera. There's also things like continuous delivery, which really lies at the nexus of a lot of our findings. We find that a lot of things predict continuous delivery, which then predicts software delivery. And by continuous delivery, we mean the ability to release software at any time on demand to users. And so that, of course, is correlated strongly to the release cadence and velocity of releases, is how quickly can we move things through the pipeline. Some research that's been done and has not been published shows that the longer a bit of code sits in the pipeline, the more likely it is to cause bugs. And we also know from published research that the more expensive they are, the later they are in when they're caught. So those are a whole bunch of technical things. We also look at process things. So a big one is streamlining change approvals. So like having a CAB, change advisory board, that has to approve everything before it goes to prod. That really slows you down. We do need the checks and balances. We do need that validation, but we need to do it in a way that's faster and can operate on smaller units of change. And then finally, cultural. I mentioned the Western model, having that generative culture, as well as things like transformational leadership that rewards and incentivizes the things that we are looking to achieve, blamelessness, and shared learning through both success and failure. So you're gonna have to find your own path. That said, there are some good, safe bets. And most important, well done, you set me up for my last bit. Our last surprise, which really is something that we probably kinda knew already, and it's this. Teams that recognize the need to continuously improve have higher organizational performance than those that don't. Recognize the need to continuously improve. Attitude matters. Culture matters. Incentives matter. So the teams that are always searching for the next improvement, learning together and communicating and reflecting, these teams deliver more value to their users and organizations. It's not about being perfect. It's about working together to always be better tomorrow than today. And these teams have a better time doing it, have better quality of life. So in the spirit of continuous collaborative learning and, more importantly, continuous collaborative snacking, because we have a break up next, I'm going to close with an invitation. Please visit DORA.dev to explore the research and sign up at DORA.community to join the ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. All right.